Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Woke She-Hulk. Woke She-Hulk is getting deleted from a new Marvel TV series, Daredevil Born Again. Daredevil happens to be my favorite Marvel character, one step above Wolverine, and I've kind of always felt like that when I was a kid. Those are the comics I bought. And years ago, they used to be great. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Disney Plus has a new Marvel TV series called Daredevil Born Again. That series will ignore all elements of Daredevil's appearances in She-Hulk, including his relationship with Jennifer Walters. Yes, he did have an overnight with Jennifer Walters. And when she's not She-Hulk, that's who she is. Showrunner Dario Scarpedine, and we'll go into what a showrunner is in just a minute, confirmed that while Daredevil is canon in the MCU, they are choosing not to acknowledge certain past events. She-Hulk has been quietly removed from Marvel's main Disney Plus lineup, and she's not getting a second season. She-Hulk Attorney at Law was one of the most controversial MCU shows, facing backlash for its comedic tone and portrayal of Daredevil. The comedic tone of She-Hulk in the TV series was really atrocious. It wasn't funny. It wasn't good. She-Hulk did have a sense of humor to it when it was done by John Byrne in the comic books starting in the late 1980s. It was a good series. I didn't read it often, but I did buy it often because that's just what you would do back in the late 1980s. You would buy things that were just kind of cool and that everybody else liked. That's the power of a good brand. That's the power of maintaining a brand. But now, Marvel is distancing itself from She-Hulk as a whole, with actress Tatiana Maslany admitting that a second season is unlikely. The She-Hulk show faced criticism for alienating fans, particularly through its depiction of online critics as the villains. The showrunner has also dismissed Netflix's Daredevil as overly introspective, leading to concerns that Born Again may not embrace the qualities that fans loved about the original series. Because there was a Netflix series based on Daredevil that was actually very good, and it was low budget. It was like $3 million an episode. Now they need to spend $25 million an episode just to make a bad or a mediocre episode of any Disney Plus Marvel series. Disney and Marvel have been struggling with declining viewership on Disney Plus, as recent releases like Agatha All Along and Echo have flopped. Born Again now has the opportunity to restore Daredevil's reputation, but fans remain skeptical due to Marvel's inconsistent handling of its characters. If Marvel truly wants to win back fans, it must balance honoring Daredevil's past while crafting a fresh, compelling story that avoids She-Hulk's mistakes. The Marvel Comics She-Hulk series was sexy, it was fun, and it was straight superhero. I don't know how much time they spent at Marvel trying to figure out what was so cool about the She-Hulk series that John Byrne put together. He was the writer and the artist. He had the vision for this thing. I don't know if they even picked up the phone and called the guy and said, hey, could you consult with us a little bit? It wouldn't even be about the money. I'm sure he'd be willing to help. Maybe they did. As far as I know, they didn't. But they certainly didn't capture any of the magic of this She-Hulk comic book series. All they did was try to put the actual Hulk in the show and say, hey, look, we've got the Hulk from the movie series. Isn't that great? Don't you want to see the She-Hulk series? No, it wasn't enough to make people get serious about and want to dedicate themselves to watching the She-Hulk TV series. The ratings were really, really bad. And no matter how much money they spent, and it was more than $25 million an episode, it wasn't enough to make the series work and make the series interesting. Even the effects were badly done, and they had all of this time and all of this money to make these shows good. I would tell you honestly, if I was to take on making a CGI show like She-Hulk, it would be difficult for me to do a good job, especially because it would be my first series. But this was Marvel. They had all the resources of Marvel Studios, all of the contacts, all of the talent. What excuse could they possibly have for not knowing what they could and couldn't do with the series to put together at least an attractive looking package, even if the stories were terrible? Here's another example of the kind of stories they did in the She-Hulk series in the comics. Sensational She-Hulk from 1989. She-Hulk must think fast to get herself out of a marriage to the Mole Man. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's nonsense, it's fun, but would it sell? Yeah, people were interested in something like this. Of all potential critics, anything that was woke is something that Daily Beast would love to promote and say, look, you can get away from the old traditional superheroes and do things our way. Promote our point of view. Even the Daily Beast was not down with this series. From the Daily Beast, She-Hulk was soulless garbage, but it didn't have to be. Also from the Daily Beast, the She-Hulk special effects are an uncanny... Let me say that again. From the Daily Beast, the She-Hulk special effects are an uncanny valley nightmare. Uncanny valley is when you see something and you say, it's not quite human, but it's similar to human, and it makes you uncomfortable to look at. Because you know something is just off. And yes, special effects are hard to do, but this is Marvel. These guys made billions of dollars on their movies. They really don't know how to do special effects. They kind of do, but they sort of don't. Now they've gone back to producing less projects, and that might help on their quality. It might not. But none of this should have ever been released, certainly not without talking to John Byrne and figuring out what's the mix of what you did with the character and then trying to really replicate that with competent people, and they didn't have competent people. All they were doing was DEI woke nonsense, and that's why this series bombed. As the expression goes, garbage in, garbage out. Coming from thatparkplace.com, and this is a good website, I definitely suggest you check these guys out. Daredevil Born Again will ignore all connections to She-Hulk series, showrunner confirms. Here's what a showrunner is. A showrunner is the person who has the overall creative authority and management responsibility for a television show. Quote, the vision of the show as a whole does not come from the freelance or even the staff writer, but from the showrunner. What's the difference between a showrunner and a producer? A showrunner is in charge of running the writer's room, in addition to managing the creative output of the entire show. There are line producers who handle the day-to-day financial logistics, but all creative decisions, including costumes, set decoration, character arcs, and editing, and all that all goes to the showrunner. Daredevil's showrunner, Dario Scarpedane, has officially confirmed what many fans hoped to hear. Daredevil's controversial appearance in She-Hulk Attorney-at-Law, including his much-aligned walk of shame and one-night stand with Jennifer Walters, will be ignored in the Disney Plus revival. This revelation, which came during an interview with SFX magazine, aligns with what appears to be a broader effort by Marvel to quietly distance itself from the She-Hulk debacle. Scarpedane stated that while Daredevil's past Marvel Cinematic Universe appearances are technically canon, which means they're part of the official history, his approach to Born Again allows for selective acknowledgement of those events. Quote, you could say that Daredevil is canon in the MCU. Those other events happened, but some of them we're not leaning into, he explained, adding his one-night stand with She-Hulk may be one of those things. For fans who were outraged by She-Hulk's comedic portrayal of Daredevil, this is a step in the right direction. Marvel's decision to sideline She-Hulk appears to go beyond Daredevil Born Again. Actress Tatiana Maslany, who starred as the titular character, has admitted that a second season of She-Hulk is unlikely, to say the least. Additionally, Disney Plus removed the series from its prominent Marvel banner in November 2024, replacing She-Hulk with Deadpool. While Disney has officially not yet commented on their decision, the move speaks volumes about the company's desire to quietly sweep She-Hulk under the rug. If they were proud of She-Hulk, you would see a lot more of She-Hulk. It's not hard to see why Marvel is so eager to move on. She-Hulk Attorney-at-Law was one of the most divisive shows in MCU history, facing backlash for its overt embrace of identity politics and its dismissive attitude towards fans. One particularly infamous scene featured Jennifer Walters belittling Bruce Banner, who is the actual Hulk, minimizing his pain and rage rooted in years of trauma and tragedy by comparing it to her experiences of being catcalled on the street. For many fans, this moment exemplified the show's tone-deaf approach to storytelling. The She-Hulk series then doubled down on its controversial stance by making toxic fans the main villains of its narrative, in an apparent attempt to address criticism of Marvel's increasingly female-focused direction, which would be fine if they treated females properly in the series, and in the MCU, and in what you would expect from the Marvel brand if they were consistent with what they did when people liked how females were portrayed in the Marvel brand. And if that's not the way that people want to see them today, then they shouldn't have made that the focus of what they were trying to accomplish. Go back to what works. Stay within the expectations of what people actually expect to see. And if you don't deliver that, you're violating your values for your brand. And it doesn't matter if it's Marvel or Bud Light or Target, whatever it is. A brand is a promise. And if you break that promise, you will lose the customer. Brands transcend product category. Let's talk about Bud Light for a second. When you're looking for a beer, you might choose Bud Light. You're not going to choose it anymore, but you might have chosen Bud Light. You might have chosen Miller Lite or some other product. But when a brand establishes itself with a consumer, it transcends the product category. So you're not looking for a product anymore. You're looking for an experience, a memory, a connotation. That's the value of a brand. It goes beyond category. It goes directly to the consumer's experience. You can't play around with things like that. If you want to innovate on it, if you want to evolve the brand for modern times, you have to be very careful, and Disney certainly wasn't being very careful. Of course, Bud Light was not being careful. Target wasn't being careful. But if you want to go beyond what people's typical expectations are, it's extremely difficult to do that. You can't just say, I don't care about the past. This is 2023 or 2024 or 2025, so we're going to make changes that you might not agree with, but that's because you're a bigot. That doesn't work with the consumer. Whenever you're trying to sell something, whether it's a product or a service, or it's even just getting people's attention to watch a TV show, you're still selling it. You're still trying to get people to engage with something at the expense of doing something else. Initially, because you're servicing a category demand, like entertainment, for example. Or in the case of beer, it would be because you want to get loaded and you want to have a beer. When you have a good experience with a brand, it then transcends that. It goes beyond category. And when you're looking for a good time, you then go to your established brand. That's why you can't violate the brand promise. You always have to keep that brand promise first. And if you don't keep that brand promise, you have not provided the value that you promised you were going to provide. And that's why people reject all of this nonsense. By outwardly mocking and vilifying its critics, the show abandoned the nuance and subtlety that once defined Marvel storytelling. Fans who raised legitimate concerns were dismissed as toxic, leaving little room for constructive dialogue. And ultimately, it's the fans that have to actually watch the shows. Yes, the writers and the showrunner and the producers, they had access to all the resources from Disney to make whatever kind of show they wanted to make. But you can't make people watch a show if they don't want to watch a show. Scarta Payne's decision to distance Born Again from She-Hulk may be an acknowledge of these missteps. However, his criticism of Netflix's Daredevil series, calling it overly introspective and accusing it of navel-gazing, threatens to undermine the goodwill he's gaining with fans. And he has no need to do that. It's almost like he's reluctantly making the show what fans want it to be. It looks like, for the most part, from the trailer, from people's reaction to what they've seen of it so far, they like the Daredevil show. Scarta Payne's dismissal of the original series' thoughtful storytelling, praise for his exploration of Matt Murdock's inner struggles, has frustrated longtime fans. If you're a fan of Daredevil, you do care about his inner struggles. That was a big part of what made the 1980s Frank Miller series so compelling and so relatable and so interesting. And also so unique. Still, the decision to abandon She-Hulk's controversial elements gives Born Again a fighting chance. Fans can take comfort in knowing that the Daredevil walking the streets of New York in this series won't be the same one making cringeworthy walk of shame gags. But if Scarbadane truly wants to win over fans, he would do well to embrace the depth and introspection that made Netflix's Daredevil such a success. The real question now is whether Born Again can strike a balance between honoring the character's rich history and carving out a fresh direction. For Marvel's sake, let's hope they've learned from their mistakes. Cosmic McNews also did this story, Daredevil Born Again dumps She-Hulk. And if you follow my channel, you know I love Cosmic Book News. But they also did a take on why She-Hulk is never getting a second series. Let's look at that, because it's pretty great. She-Hulk Season 2, 10 reasons why it's not happening. Producing She-Hulk was way too expensive. With a reported budget of $225 million for its 9-episode run, She-Hulk Attorney at Law stands as one of Marvel's most expensive television shows. Despite all the money they spent, the series did not have enough success with viewers to justify anywhere near those high expenses. Disney CEO Bob Iger has since confirmed that streaming has lost Disney well over $4 billion. Now Marvel's focusing on making much cheaper shows, which is what Marvel should have done in the first place. They already produce shows for Netflix at around a cost of $3 million per episode. And yeah, that was years ago, so okay, maybe $5 million an episode, maybe $6 million an episode. They shouldn't have spent anywhere near that kind of money. Tatiana Maslany, the star of She-Hulk, has already expressed that she doesn't expect a season 2 to happen. She said this back in 2024 when asked about a season 2. Quote, "I don't think so. I think we blew our budget," and Disney was like, "No thanks." Tatiana Maslany has also made controversial comments about the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger. Why would she do something like this? Well, she felt she needed to. Tatiana Maslany blasted CEO Bob Iger during the summer of 2023 over his comments about the strikes, where she said, quote, "I think he's completely out of touch. He's completely out of touch with the workers who make his shows happen, who make people want to watch these shows, who bring viewers to him and make him money. Having worked on a Disney show, I know where people fall through the cracks and where people are taken advantage of, and it's outrageous the amount of wealth that is not shared with the people who actually make the show. That's crew, cast, and writers." Okay, sure, but who's going to share the money when the money is lost on the show? Are you offering to return your pay for having worked on the show and give up any rights to any future residuals you might have? You know, it's the funny thing is, yes, I agree that companies should be sharing success when they have success, but maybe they should also be sharing failure when they have failure. And perhaps she would offer to do something like that for the company. Do you know how much money they lost on this show? How much credibility they lost that then affected other shows and other films and licensing that they did because the show was a flop? And it's not completely her fault it was a flop, but that's what happens when you own the product that you're putting out. You get all the success and all the failure, and the people that help you put it out usually have some participation in the success of the show. Not the failure, but the success. You can't ask for much more than that, unless you want to risk your own money and make your own shows and your own products. Tatiana Maslany also made controversial comments about parental rights. She said this, quote, "It should not be in the control of parents how a child identifies, how a child knows themselves to be. This isn't a parent's place, it's overreach," she said in June. "It's an overreach on the part of provincial government to legislate that. It's absurd." You know, the thing about this, Tatiana Maslany, is it's a little bit recent that we have this entire trans agenda where we're trying to legitimize everybody swapping their genders, and it's an idea, but you know, parents have had children for a very long time now. It's a little difficult to tell parents what they should be doing with their children based on this recent trend of gender swapping. That's certainly not going to help get a season 2 going for She-Hulk. Bottom line on the ratings were just way too low on She-Hulk to even consider doing a second season. The fans also did not like She-Hulk. She-Hulk is the lowest rated Marvel project on Rotten Tomatoes from fans with a score of only 32%, even lower than Inhumans, Iron Fist, Captain Marvel, and one of Marvel's recent failures called Echo. Marvel is also changing its approach and moving to more proven concepts, things that they know people will spend time on watching. Additionally, like Eternals and Shang-Chi, She-Hulk has no MCU connections because its series was so poorly received. So there's no reason to continue the story and the legend of She-Hulk, and that I would not hold against them. If it's not successful, there's no reason to tell that story. They have many other characters, a lot of other things they could focus on. If they see there's consumer interest in one character or another storyline, of course that's what they should focus on, not She-Hulk. And in general, Disney has said they're going to pull back on Marvel. They've directly said they're not going to spend the kind of money they were spending making new Marvel projects. And She-Hulk of all Marvel series was way too woke. Fans are tired of the lecturing and they're tired of the agenda. She-Hulk was born out of Marvel's disastrous woke Phase 4, which has now completely failed. Disney and Marvel have finally made the right move. She-Hulk is not a character that should continue either in its series or in any other series or anywhere else. She may show up, and it would be good for them to have She-Hulk show up and recast her as something that actually makes sense. Something that would have worked within the expectation of the all-important fans who actually supported the comic book series that made the character viable in the first place. I'm not sure if they're going to do that, but I know they're not going to take Tatiana Maslany and make a She-Hulk Season 2. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you'd like to support this channel and help me make even more videos, you can become a member. Check out the membership by just clicking on Join.